Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for joining us here, both online and here at Kol Hadash. It's a pleasure to have you here to celebrate Shabbat. We are in the midst of summer, leading into the high holidays, which are 6 weeks away. Hopefully you will be joining us for those as well. But of course, Shabbat runs every week, so we have a chance to think, reflect, connect, and feel part of our communities. After all, we live in concentric circles of community. We have our household, our family, our neighborhood, our state, our fandom of different sports teams, but also our national identity as Americans. And so tonight's Shabbat service, we're going to be exploring America at 250 years, from 1776 to 2026. What's changed? What's stayed the same? What challenges do we face going forward? And how has this affected American Jews? After all, that's part of our angle on Jewish history and on American history. But of course, we have a Shabbat service to start, to get beyond the cares of the ordinary day and week and enter into a space of peace and reflection. And so our service will begin, as it often does, with our nigun, where the melody matters more than the words. Bim and bam don't mean anything, but Shabbat Shalom is wishing each other a peaceful time of pausing and reflection. So as you feel comfortable, please join me. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam, bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat 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 Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Bim, bam, bim, 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 bam. Bim, 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 bam. Just hum. Mm-hmm. 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 Shabbat is a time of memory and a time of peace. Jews have imagined Shabbat as a time outside of time, an echo of Eden and a hint of heaven. We remember our people's imagination and we add our own. As they recalled paradise, we recall family. As they envisioned redemption, we imagine peace. Shabbat is a time of peace and a time of memory. We begin Shabbat by lighting candles. The flames are symbols of light and inspiration, and their warmth surrounds us with the comforts of home and history. We learn and we celebrate together. To light our Shabbat candles this evening, I'd like to invite our Oneg hosts, Irene and Joan, to come forward as we sing, and Jeremy too. I was watching who was setting up. And as we sing our candle lighting song, Baruch HaOr, let us light these lights.
Shalom.
The wonder of wine is that it is different everywhere in the world. Even the same seed, grown in different soil and different air and water, turns out differently and is aged differently and is treated differently. And so each wine is in its own way a fingerprint of the people who made it, the generations that produced it, and the natural world that gave it birth. And that true is the genius of immigration and migration and change. People are different when they grow in different soil and different air and water and surroundings. And that is what makes America so unique in the world, with most people not being able to say, this is where I've always been. Even the people who say this is where they've always been weren't always here, because they came from the Bering Strait thousands of years ago. This is the uniqueness of America. This is the connection to wine that I find meaningful. And so this evening I'll sing our Kiddush in Hebrew. Those who feel comfortable, please join me. And then we can say the English all together. Savri marnan v'rabanan de etmol, kiddashnu et hayayin. Savri marnan v'rabanan de hayom, baruchim borei pri hagafen. Hashabat mesamchenu, Hashabat merapeinu, legufotenu, lenafshotenu. Hashabat meashrenu, Baruchim Hashomrim et Yom HaShabbat. In English, the rabbis and sages of old proclaimed, we sanctify this wine. The rabbis and sages of today proclaim, blessed is the fruit of the vine. Shabbat makes us joyful. Shabbat heals us in body and in spirit. Shabbat enriches us. Blessed are those who keep the Shabbat. L'chaim, l'chaim, to life. A song for gratitude. What does it take to treasure each day, to give thanks for the gifts not earned, to savor the taste of every first fruit, and know that enough is as good as a feast? It takes a lifetime to learn how to live, to sort through the stuff that fills up our days, to weigh and measure just what to claim, and know that enough is as good as a feast. So sit at nightfall with those you love and light a candle to greet the dark. Clasp hands as you bless the bread and know that enough is as good as a feast. Open your heart to the joy and the pain, the bitter and the sweet of the knowledge you've gained, and sweetly surrender to what you can't change, and know that enough is as good as a feast. Like awakening after a long illness to find your health stole back in while you slept, your sorrow in its time will retreat, and the knowledge you carried all along will reemerge, whole and cleansed. One day you will not thrash in the too bright light, looking for a corner in which to close your eyes. One morning the weight will not be there beneath your eyelids, the first thing you wake to. It will not settle on your tongue like a lump of salt. And because you have stayed this long unrelenting in the unrelenting world, you know that time, though imperfect, is diligent and wrestles down grief, and that all things are born small and grow large, except grief, which is born large and grows small. If you're comfortable standing, could I ask you to stand for just a moment? When we gather for Shabbat, we celebrate life, and we also create space for memory and love. After all, everything that lives will eventually die, and people that we love may be gone, and yet we still love them. And so we create space in this Shabbat for memory and for the abiding love that we still feel. This week we mark the loss of longtime member Lita Passon, who died at age 100 this past weekend. We also remember Paul Kaplan, a past member of the congregation, whose memorial service was today after he passed some 2 months ago. We also remember with love Gerald Beatty, the husband of Sarah Beatty, our longtime choir director, whose memorial service is tomorrow. If there are any other names that those here this evening would like to remember, I invite you to speak them out loud at this time, or for those online, you're welcome to unmute and speak or type into chat, and I'll share the names there.
Dawn Bragg,
Dorothy Mitch. Let us pause for a moment of silent tribute to their memories and in memory of all of our loved ones. Thank you. Please be seated to a song of love. America is 250 years old, sort of. Because where do you count the start of America? Is it 1776 with the Declaration of Independence? Is it 1787 with the ratification of the Constitution, or the writing of the Constitution and its gradual ratification? Is it a later point in time when more people than just land-owning white men were allowed to vote? Well, when does America become America? And what is America all about anyways? It's something we've been arguing about since 1776, and we continue to argue about today. But when we compare today to then, 250 years is quite a long time and quite a lot of change. So I thought maybe we'd look at a couple of snapshots of the differences between America today and America then as we start this conversation. First, total population. What would you guess is the total population of the US today in 2026? 343 million is the number. Again, more or less, census estimates and so on. How many were living in those 13 colonies declaring independence in 1776? How many people? Let's just count people that we would count. Let's put it that way. It's about 2.5 million. So we are 135 times bigger today than we were then. How many square miles in the United States? Well, I'm not even going to ask you to guess. It's 3.8 million square miles in the US today. How many in 1776? It was about 430,000 square miles, which is about 2/3 of Alaska. Alaska is bigger in square mileage rather, than the entire country was in 1776. What about the urban versus rural split? What percent of America would you guess today lives in urban or suburban settings, a non-rural setting? What percent would you think? 70, 80? It's 80%. It's 80%, about 20% rural. What about in 1776? It was even more than the opposite. It was 95% living on a farm or a plantation or a small settlement of some kind. That's just a few data points. Think about the change in professions, the change in technology and communication, the change in mobility and transportation, the changes in family structure, the changes in longevity and the effects that has on society, and so many more differences between then and now. But maybe one of the points that we should look at, which really gets to the essence of what America is all about, is this question of democracy and voting specifically, because after all, a real democracy involves voting. Now, in the 2024 presidential election, what percent of voting age citizens would you guess were registered in America? What percent of potential voters were actually registered to vote? It's actually 74% of potential voters were registered. And what percent actually voted? About 65% of the potential voters actually voted. Now, in raw numbers, that means there's 236 million possible voters out of that 343 million, because you've got kids and you've got immigrants that aren't in citizenship status and so on. And in some states, you have felons who are barred from voting. But you've got 236 million possible voters. You've got 174 million registered and 154 million actually voted. If you're curious about the breakdown of the people that actually voted, 64% of men voted and 70% of women voted. 83% of those with advanced college degrees voted. 77% of those with bachelor's degrees voted. What percent of high school graduates would you guess voted? About 52% voted. Now, you get people sometimes on the left side of the political aisle who said the solution is we need more people to vote. But actually, if you got more high school degree people to vote, it might not turn out the way you want it to. And the people who are voting for your side, the college and educated and advanced degrees, are already voting in very large numbers. So we have to think about the realities here. And of course, in some states, as I mentioned, felons can't vote, non-citizens can't vote, and minors, of course, are not voting yet. Now let's go back 250 years, the founding of America in 1776. Now, there wasn't federal voting, of course. There were state voting for state legislatures in many cases. The first federal election took place in 1788. This is the first one under this new Constitution. And under this new Constitution, it says explicitly, for anybody who doesn't hear in the back of the room, states control who gets to vote. Most of them restricted voting to property-owning or tax-paying white males. If you lived in a city, you maybe didn't own property, but you maybe paid taxes. And so you had chips on the table, and so you were allowed to vote. But of course, it was mostly only white male. There were a few that allowed free black men to vote initially. New Jersey actually allowed property-owning women to vote until 1807 when they took that away. And many states removed the rights of free black men to vote through the 1800s. In the year 1800, only 3 states had what they called universal white male suffrage, where whether you paid taxes or not, whether you owned land or not, any white man could vote. Only 3 states in 1800. In those 1788 elections, scholars estimate that maybe only 6% of the population was eligible to vote. So who cares what the turnout was? It's irrelevant to what we would call a democracy. By 1828, most states had removed the property owning requirement. And in a breakthrough, in the state of Maryland, Jews were finally allowed to vote. Jews had not been allowed to vote in Maryland from 1776 all the way through 1828, at least in state elections, but possibly also in federal elections if they're running the elections. And by 1840, 80% of the adult white male population actually voted. But of course, that's a small percentage of the overall population. So you see, the key question is, when did America become a real democracy? Is it when black men were allowed to vote theoretically in 1870? As we know, it didn't turn out that way in real life. Is it when women were allowed to vote in 1920 in federal elections? Some states had allowed them to vote in state elections before that. And again, of course, we have to note, it's mostly white women or black women living in northern states, but not in the South. Is it when Native Americans were allowed to vote in federal elections? That didn't happen until 1924. Or is it really only since the 1960s, with voting rights acts being enforced and an actual universal adult franchise, except for the felons? Are we a democracy? Were we a democracy? When were we a democracy? When were we America? An open question. There are actually a lot of open questions from 1776 that still apply today. Here's some that were definitely issues way back then, and they might sound familiar to you. The balance of power between the states and the central government. What's the proper balance? Who has control? Who has supremacy? One of the transitions that took place around the time of the Civil War was a verb change. You used to say, the United States are, as a collection of individual entities. But after the Civil War, generally people began to say the United States is, as one collective group. What are we today? Are we an are or an is? There was a need to bridge differences. One of the reasons we have the 2 houses of Congress, for whatever pain in the tuchus they may become, it was to balance large states and small states. Because a Rhode Island didn't want to be overshadowed by a Virginia in terms of just a House of Representatives based on population. And so they came up with this compromise of the 2-cameral system. Each state gets 2 senators, and then the representatives are by population. But now we deal with the Wyomings of the world and the Californias of the world, where 1 senator equals how many citizens? I do point out to people that complain about Wyoming, by the way, that Rhode Island works the same way for Democrats, as does, well, DC doesn't, but Vermont certainly does. Small population, 2 senators. There are as many blue states as there are red states that fit into that category in the bottom 10 of the population. Another key issue, the risk of political factionalism. The Founding Fathers didn't want political parties. And then guess who started them? Those same Founding Fathers, because they had issues that clumped together with other issues, and they wound up creating the party system. The question of what kind of economic system should we run? How should we raise revenue for this central government? Should it be by tariffs? Tariffs were a big issue back in the 1700s, believe it or not, just as they are today. How do we manage diversity? We have many religions. In fact, many of the states founded separately because they were different established churches in those states? Do you accept Catholics? Do you accept Jews, as we saw in Maryland? It's tricky. Not to mention different ethnic groups, or at the time you might have said racial groups. And we've been working on these issues since 1776. This is America as we might see it today. In the Constitution, in its preamble, we have an echo of these issues in one phrase. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, ordain and establish this Constitution. But it's that phrase, a more perfect union. Not that it will be perfect, but it will be more perfect. And one hopes increasingly more perfect over time. That's what we have to work on. There's more perfecting that's needed. After this Constitution was debated and formulated, Benjamin Franklin was stopped by a woman as he was leaving this constitutional convention. And he was asked, "Well, doctor, what have we got, a republic or a monarchy?" And his answer was, "A republic, if you can keep it." Of course, we've seen many changes in this republic over 250 years, even if challenges remain. After all, there is no slavery today as we understood it then. Economic inequality, well, we have a social safety net that didn't exist in the 1700s or the 1800s or even the early 1900s. We have worker safety laws, we have child safety laws. We've shifted the burden of helping those who need help from the individual or from charity organizations to social welfare programs, for good and for ill. At one time in Philadelphia, they debated an alternate model for public education. Instead of public schools that the government would have to run with all the complications involved, they said, let's just give vouchers. And anybody can go to a public school or a private school, or all schools will charge, and people that need help will help pay. But then you want to go to this religious school? Do it. You want to go to a non-religious school? You and your friends start that. And that way, it wouldn't have the government running a school be private schools for everyone and helping it was a totally different model than the public school model that we're used to today. It could have gone that way, but it didn't. And of course, we're still dealing with the challenges of democracy and voting. Do you know when the first gerrymander was done in Massachusetts by a man named Mr. Jerry? It was in 1812. So we've been dealing with this question of gerrymandering districts and elected officials choosing their voters going back to 1812. And that was when it was called that. We weren't even 40 years old as a country, and we've already started playing games. And what about the Jews? After all, they couldn't vote in Maryland for 50 years. But by and large, American Jews had it pretty good, even from early days. You might say in 1776, we had a lot of hope. In 2026, maybe the pendulum has shifted to fear, but we'll talk about that. In 1790, George Washington visited a synagogue in Rhode Island. The synagogue wrote him a letter thanking him for the visit and applauding him and wishing for the best for him. And he wrote a letter back. In some cases, he quotes them back to them directly. And in other cases, he adds his own phrasing, expressing his hopes for the future. This is the letter to the synagogue in Newport, Rhode Island, that George Washington, the first president, wrote. He said, "The citizens of the United States have a right to applaud themselves for having given to mankind examples of an enlarged and liberal policy, a policy worthy of imitation. All possess alike liberty of conscience and immunities of citizenship." Remember, this is Washington, the slave owner. Well, keep that in mind. It is now no more that toleration is spoken of as if it was by the indulgence of one class of people that another enjoyed the exercise of their inherent natural rights. We're not just tolerating you. This is you living as a full equal citizen. For happily, the government of the United States, which gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance, requires only that they live under its protection, should demean themselves as good citizens, in giving it on all occasions their effectual support. And he even expressly wishes, may the children of the stock of Abraham, who dwell in these lands, continue to merit and enjoy the goodwill of the other inhabitants, while every one of them will sit safely under their own vine and fig tree, and there will be none to make them afraid, quoting the prophets, right, directly back to the Hebrews. So this is a statement by the founding father of the country that Americans are Jews, Jews are Americans. There's no line. And the country itself gives to bigotry no sanction. This was just one piece of positive news for the Jews. In Article 6 of the Constitution, it says explicitly, no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. And when they debated this clause, by the way, some of the objectors said, well, that means you might elect a Jew or an atheist. And Jefferson said, yeah, yes. It's irrelevant to whether they can serve in office. And then, of course, the First Amendment, most famously, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. There will be no established federal church. There were state churches that lingered. We can talk about the complexities of applying this to state law as opposed to federal law. But these clauses at the very founding of the Republic gave Jews hope that this could be someplace different. We would be citizens, not just tolerated, but accepted, even celebrated. And so the Jewish population in America grew because of this positive beginning. In 1776, there were maybe 2,000 Jews living in the colonies. We were 0.1% of the population. Infinitesimal. By 1876, 100 years later, there were about 250,000 Jews living in America, large numbers coming from Central Europe in the 1840s and 50s. And at that time, we were 0.5% of the population. Now, it was different in different parts of the country. We were relatively underrepresented in rural settings. We might be overrepresented in urban settings, but we were still relatively small. Beginning in the 1880s, a huge wave of millions, literally 2.8 million European Jews found their way to this country. Today, in 2026, there are 7.5 million Jews in the country. Again, about 2.2% of the population. Different in different places. More so in New York, Baltimore, Chicago. Less so in Dubuque, Iowa. Now, Jewish Americans are also facing challenges today and have faced them throughout our history. The challenge of integration and acceptance. How far do we go in being part of the surrounding culture? We've had social and economic success with limits at times, with restrictions and quotas and bars and bans that have fallen, but also the challenges of success. The split between rich and poor is a problem in the Jewish community too. We face the challenge of denominations. It's a religious free market. So you don't have to join the synagogue in your town. If you don't like it, start your own. There's no one to stop you. Get a rabbi, get a building, off you go. You could even do it in somebody's home to start. That's where it begins. So with all this denominationalism, all this diversity in Jewish life, what does it mean to have one Jewish community? Who speaks for the Jews, if not a chief rabbi, as in some other countries? We also, of course, have the challenge, the opportunity of intermarriage. Because if there is something called civil marriage, a legal marriage that's outside of religious institutions, then maybe you can marry someone who's not from your religion. And what does that do to the religious community? How do they respond? What do they do? Just this week, the conservative movement came out with a new statement trying to encourage their congregations to be more welcoming of intermarried families. They're now officially allowed to announce an intermarriage in their congregational bulletins. Right. This is the sarcastic, slow clap response. It's like the mid-90s, their level of progress here. They're 30 years behind the times. And in some cases, they're ratifying things that their members are already doing, allowing non-Jews on the bima for a bar mitzvah for their kid. Again, we think, you're just now getting around to officially authorizing it? Well, some conservative congregations have been doing this already, and this is ratifying what's already happening. But the reality is they're still thinking in that mid-20th century perspective of what to do. The way to solve intermarriage is to deny it, to reject it, to make it unacceptable. That was the conservative message 30 years ago, 20 years ago. So they're trying to recover from that. But they're still grappling with that reality when so much more of the Jewish community has moved on. Because we've accepted that love is love. I like my son-in-law, whatever his background. And he's encouraging he's the one who takes the kids to Sunday school. So who am I to, try and make big deals over this situation that has actually been a positive thing for my family? That's the reality in the world. Obviously, we have this issue of Israel now. Wasn't the case in 1776. There was no Israel, at least no state of Israel, if the land was there. But now we have these complexities of, are we identified with what Israel does? Do we support it? Do we reject it? Do we criticize it? What do we say about it? We obviously have the challenge of being blamed for what Israel does, which could happen for other ethnicities. I don't know a lot of Russians that got a lot of blame for what Vladimir Putin was doing. Or, well, there were some Chinese people that got blamed for the COVID pandemic starting in China. We saw that too. We have the challenge of secularism on one hand, because America allows you to be secular, and we have a resurgent version of Christian nationalism. It used to be Bible readings in schools and prayers in schools, and those gradually got taken out by court decisions. But now it's come back with a vengeance, and it's come back with government support, and it's come back with Supreme Court support in some cases. And so we're now dealing with this new phenomenon of people treating America like a Christian nation. The reason why Neil Gorsuch recently said that America is not a Christian nation is because he had to. So many people are trying to assert that it is. In America, Jews have found a relative absence of anti-Semitism, at least as a full ideology where everything is blamed on the Jews, before recently. But now we see capitalism and its excess being blamed on the Jews. We see sexual immorality being blamed on Jews. We see war in the world being blamed on Jews. It's a tough time to be Jewish, even more so than before. But of course, we also have divided Jewish opinions on religiosity, on which party is the safer home or the more dangerous place for Jewish political allegiance, and of course, diversity of perspectives on Israel. Historically, though, America was a place of Jewish hope. The hope was this place would be different. And so I want to stop talking in just a moment and open it up to you for your thoughts with some words of hope. You may have heard this once before. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed sunset gate shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep ancient lands your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Emma Lazarus was a Sephardic Jew, one of the founding style of Judaism to make its way to these shores, who wrote this poem in response to a challenge. Could you write the message of America to live on the base of this statue? This was the winner. It spoke of hope, and it spoke of the huddled masses of her own people coming, not from Spain, not from Latin America, but from Eastern Europe and Southern Europe and every corner of the globe. This was the America of hope. Are we still living in a time of hope? Well, I'm sure there are lots of opinions. And so with this, I want to stop sharing. I want to open up for your thoughts, your comments, your questions. We can pass the microphone around. Thank you, David. Make sure it's on. And I wanted to start with a more uplifting question, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of downers out there. The question is, what do you think was the most important success or most impressive achievement of the United States over the last 250 years? What did we get right? What did we do well?
So my parents and I came to New York when I was 11 years old in 1961, and we saw the lady and the torch. And I was excited to know that her first name was Emma, like mine. When I learned that at school later on, when I learned English, which took a few months. The hope, in my case, just to be, very personal, my mother came through to Morocco during World War II, and her family in Poland obviously was killed. But her sister was in Morocco. She was there, a refugee, and then I was born. So we came for her and for my adoptive dad, who was from Ukraine. This was their second adopted land. And they didn't speak English. I didn't speak English. But just to know that the statue's poem was written by an Emma, for me, was a very big deal, because I was an Emma. So when I went to school, we came in April, so I went to school right away. And I kind of started to ask questions when my first teachers spoke Polish, so I was able to communicate with her. And I asked her a question about this statue and this poem, and there's an Emma, and she explained it to me. And for some, well, I just felt more attached to this country because there was a poem written by an Emma at the entrance of the port that I came into. The questions of what do you do as an immigrant, and then the questions, of course, we were in a Puerto Rican and Polish neighborhood and saw all those sometimes very violent things going on almost immediately after we came in the early 60s. There was very tumultuous and very upsetting in some ways to see that this is not a perfect place. When you come from somewhere, you hope it is. And I'm sure for my parents, it was the same. As when you're a kid, you can't like assimilate all that and explain it. But the point is that it's been a very wonderful place for my mom, who was a hidden Jew, and for my dad, who suffered through the Stalin years and came here. Again, no language, but they made it work. And so I guess to just come around to Emma Lazarus and learning more about her and the meaning of that port for so many people still today. I mean, people fly in, of course. It's just, it's huge and beautiful.
Plus, where else in the world would a Kovalenko have met a Bilotti to make a family? The question was, what's something good that America's done? What's a success that America's accomplished over these 250 years?
So I'm just going to say maybe imperfect, but adapting and evolving, and so having the flexibility to do that.
Okay.
And by that, I just mean, dealing finally with slavery, a civil war, expanding the right to vote, and all those kind of increments of progress.
Right.
Well, you covered a lot of them. So did Jeremy. But I'd say the constant increasing the right to vote. And it's a complete, until real recently, it seemed that the trend continued to an enlargement. Blacks, women, I'm sure there are many other non-land owners. And we have setbacks, but the trend has been plus.
So those are the successes. What have been the biggest mistakes, the failures, the shortcomings? Well, maybe those are easier to think of.
Our relationships with the indigenous populations.
Right? The Native American experience. Yeah.
It's the hiccup in took a long time for Black people to vote, and even after they allowed by law, it took a while to enforce that. That's a blight on our history.
Right.
Every 50 years, maybe less, there's always something in this country that makes it go down 3 steps or 4 steps. But it always comes back. Civil War. Nothing could be worse for this country than having a civil war. But it brought out people's energies to some sides. Everybody thought they were right. The North thought they were right. The South thought they were right. The North won, so the North became right. Immigration laws in the early 30s, banning people from coming. History repeats itself. We're doing the same thing now, but the country always seems to rise above that, and we overcome the things that are bad. We overcome, and then we move to the next level. So I have hope. I do have hope that in 3 years, this country will overcome the current crisis and become a more perfect union.
So say us all.
I see Joan has a hand up.
Joe.
I think it's amazing that in this country, there's a right to education. In many countries, there isn't. I've worked in countries where schooling stopped at 5th grade for most children. And you're able to go on through high school. And then if you're able to, there are different ways to go to college. It's totally amazing. And we should be a much better country because of it. I don't understand where education has fallen down. But I don't know, they keep redesigning the curriculum. It gets a little confusing. But it's still, you can go to school. We're required to go to school, and that's wonderful.
Interesting. Janet, please.
I just thought it was interesting when you referred to the founding fathers originally didn't want political parties. And to me, that is a problem. And if I had to say the single most thing is that where politician has become a profession instead of the statesman who would give, you were supposed to serve some time and then go back to your estate or being a doctor or being a lawyer. And the year-round concern of money, of fundraising all the time, that's their job now. And they go home to their states every weekend and they don't have a chance to build connections across the aisle the way they once did. Their kids stay in their home states. They aren't in the PTA with the same people. And the division, even in my lifetime, has gotten so stark. I try to have hope for a more perfect union, but it's hard.
Well, this is the challenge of democracy. I think it was Churchill that said that democracy is wasteful and inefficient and corrupt, and it's the best of the alternatives. And our system with the two-party system has its problems, no question. But look at a country like Belgium or Israel or the Netherlands, where they have these multi-party democracies where now you're trying to create coalitions that are unstable and the squeakiest wheel gets the grease and you don't know what you're voting for because your party might go in coalition with a party that you find anathema and it's also corrupt and inefficient and problematic. So there's no one magic solution that's going to solve all the problems. We try to do our best And maybe there's new solutions like ranked choice voting might make people be nicer to each other because you need your opponent's voters to vote for you on a second tier. And maybe that's a way to make things a little bit better. But we're still trying to figure out what we can do to address it.
Instead of talking about errors or mistakes, I sort of look at the country as a biological event, evolving, reacting to different stimuli, moving left, moving right, and on balance, if we're to be honest, I think moving in the right direction. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a beacon for so many people to come here because people do know our warts, the good and the bad.
It's complex, right? It's like a mature relationship with a person or with a country or with its history. We've got a lot more to talk about, of course. It's an endless conversation. I was thinking we would go through and do a strategic plan for America. And what do you have to do with a strategic plan? You start with, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? What are your opportunities looking forward and what are the threats that you have to guard against? And I thought we'd do that for America first and then for the Jewish part of America too. What are our strengths as a community? What are our weaknesses? What are our opportunities and what are the threats to the American Jewish community? But that would keep you away from the food for too long. So I decided instead to let you talk about these over food. There's plenty more to discuss. And instead what I'd like to do is to conclude with a poem I've used before at Kol Hadash, so apologies to those who have heard it before. It's a poem I wrote maybe 14 years ago or so that is a discussion of the American dream, but from a Jewish perspective and with some historical context too. It's called Dumplings and Dreams. Kreplach in a choilem is nit kein kreplach nor a choilem. Dumplings in a dream are not dumplings, but a dream. The American dream is not America, but a dream. Land where my fathers died, not Lithuania, Belarus, Aleppo, Paris, Jerusalem. Real graves are dumplings, the song, the dream. We the people, not in a people's history, not powerless people, native people, dark people, women people. Real lives are dumplings, the words, the dream. One nation under God. Your God? My God? Whose God? Why God? Why not in good we trust? Doubts are dumplings, the slogan, the dream. But dreams mean, said Sigmund Gaon of Vilna. 7 fat dumplings eaten by 7 lean. Not fate, maybe future. Not reality, changing reality. Some say the American dream is Jewish Hollywood dream. Safe home, blonde wife, 2.2 kids in 2.2 cars. Some say the American dream is American nightmare, built of bodies and blood, screams and silence. Dreams mean. Im tirtzu enzo agada. If you will it, it is no dream. It is no longer only a dream. My fathers died there, but mine will die here, as will my sons. We are the people, a still more perfect union, one nation in diversity, God optional, blended, cross-pollinated, mixed and miscegenated, hybrid vigors fruits from Jewish roots. Dreams become. Dreams become the possible, then possible becomes present. Kreplach in America are both kreplach and dumplings. The American dream is not America, is America, is a dream, is. Thank you for listening. Thank you to the Chase Gibsons for hosting our ONE. And our closing song will be in our service again. Let me find that proper PDF. And it's our Peace Be With You, wishing everyone peace, love, and joy. Please join in singing. Once again, I wish you a Shabbat Shalom, and please wish Shabbat Shalom to the people sitting near you. And Shabbat Shalom to those online as well.